Hello dazzling developers, up for an adventure? Today I am going to challenge you to solve one of the quirkiest user interface problems you ever seen. I am going to challenge you to build a file uploader. So if you've used the web for a while, you likely come across one of these. The file uploader looks like a button which on click opens the file browser where you can select all your files and upload them. We can also drag and drop one of the file to upload, and this is the hardest thing to get right, which our current reference example doesn't implement correctly. So we want our file uploader to have all this styling and implement the functionality correctly. Before we begin, let's set the right expectations. I'm going to build this for the web, and so I'm going to use JavaScript. Also, we aren't going to use any libraries or frameworks. This means we aren't going to use UI libraries like React, Vue, Angular. We aren't going to use any CSS tooling, no third-party dependencies, so no npm install, and also we aren't going to use Babel or Webpack. So there's no transpilation steps, no build tooling, anything. And this is done purposefully. So we know under the hood how our solution is working. We aren't building a solution which is specifically tied to a framework or a library. And whatever we learn here, we can easily apply anywhere. Also, we aren't going to cover uploading files to a server, which involves serialization and anything else that you might be looking for. We are just going to solve the user interface part of the problem. So now you have the right expectations, we can go ahead and start building. But wait, since this is a challenge, I would have to tell you what makes a solution acceptable. First thing, it should look like a button. The default HTML button doesn't look very nice. I don't want to see the no file chosen placeholder. I also want the button to look better. So you can take the reference of the one you can see on your screen right now. Second, it should be accessible by keyboard, and when I press tab, it should gain focus and have a visual indication of it. Third, we should be able to select a file using the file browser, and we should also be able to drag and drop a file and it should just work. So if you meet all of these 4 tests, I consider your solution accepted. And it's time for showdown. So it's time for me to reveal the solution. So we are going to solve the problem without using JavaScript and with JavaScript. The solution without JavaScript is fascinating because, as you'll see, it solves most of our scenarios, and it's very fascinating that how much we can achieve without using any JavaScript. But as we'll see, we'll have to move to a JavaScript based solution because it would be difficult to support drag and drop without JavaScript. So first we'll go and look at the solution without using JavaScript, and then we'll re-implement the solution using it. And once we do that, we'll continue and add support for drag and drop, which would lead to a complete solution. So you have the whole pathway. So let's move to the first without JavaScript solution. So the default HTML file input has many behaviors already. So it shows a file browser on click. We can even have keyboard accessibility. So if I hit tab, I am able to gain focus on the input and I can open the file browser just using my keyboard. So it's also keyboard accessible. The only part it doesn't have is it doesn't look really nice and we want to modify it, which isn't possible. This is because there is no direct way to modify the input styles of the file input. So the way is we have to replace it with another element, and how we are going to do it is using label. So there is a common pattern. If you worked on the web for a few times, then you likely have come across this pattern, which is if we wrap label around an input element, we can do something like this. We can add an element inside of it besides the input, and now this element acts as if it is a replacement for the input, which is if I click on the div tag here, it transfers the click to the input, and which is what we want. Then what we can do is we can hide the input and our problem is solved, because I can now modify the styles of the div tag and make it look like a button. I can also show some focus styles on it. So we'll see this solution. So here I have a base setup and we have an index.html file. I'm importing some fonts from Google, and there's also a base style sheet that I'm using as a reset. So I have some default styles, then the browser provided styles. So the style.css is empty and we'll fill it out as we need. So let's first add the input element here, and as we'll see, I can open the file browser. I can even hit tab and see the files. Now what I would do is I would wrap it around a label, and I would also add one element besides the input tag, which would act as the replacement. So you can see just now that if I hit on the span tag, it would open the file browser as if I am clicking on the input. So that's that. So now what we'll do is we'll hide the file input. Before that, let's see what's the behavior that we are getting. I can still focus the file input and open it, right? And I can also click on the span tag to open it. So let's just hide the file input now, and beware that the file input is still getting focused. So if I hit tab, but there's no visual indication that it's getting focused, and if I hit enter, it still opens the file browser because the file input was focused, but we didn't get that. Okay, with that aside, let's just make this look like a button. Now it looks like a button. We'll also add a visual indication that the file input is getting focused. Now there's a CSS selector called sibling selector which helps us to do that, because the span tag is just besides the input. We can use the sibling selector here, And the way it works is when the input gains focus, just show an outline. So that this is the behavior that we would get, and it's done. So this is the without JavaScript solution, and it's very fascinating that out of our 4 tests, this solution just takes care of 3 of them. So our work is mostly done. If we didn't need drag and drop, then this is the solution which would likely work. So now we are going to re-implement this using JavaScript, and the concept is going to be similar. We are going to hide the file input, and here we are going to use a button as a replacement for the file input. It's different from the previous approach in this case, where we have to explicitly listen on the button for the click event, and we'll have to pass it to the file input. Previously, when we were using tab to gain focus on the file input, this time we'll be doing that with button, and we'll have to explicitly tell that don't focus on the file input element. So we directly gain focus on the button. So we'll see that. So in our code, we'll add the file input first. So this is the same setup that we were using before. I've just added a main.js style sheet which is empty, main.js script file which is empty, and now I'm adding a button here. So as we can tell, we are gaining focus on both of the file input and the button, and we don't want to gain focus on the first one, and we'll do that. So go on to the style sheet and we'll add this to our styles, and the visibility hidden part is required so that we don't gain focus on the input. So as we'll see, I directly gain focus on the button when I hit tab, and that's how it should be. Let's style the button now so that it looks like a button. Now I also would add some focus style, so when the button is focused, it looks and gives a visual indication that it's getting focused. Okay, so now it's getting focused here. I'll also center this because I like things when they are in the center. So just that. Now when I hit on the upload, it doesn't do anything because we'll have to explicitly invoke a click event on the hidden input. So we'll do that using JavaScript. So first let's grab the instance of the button and the hidden file input. Then we explicitly call click on the hidden file input by listening on the click event. Now this should work, and it opens the file browser. We can even use tab to gain focus on the button and open the file browser. So that's that. So we get 3 of 4 tests passing. Now to add drag and drop, we'll extend our JS based solution and we'll move to solution 2, which is adding support for drag and drop. So in order to support for drag and drop, we first need to add a drop area. So we just do that, and then we listen for a drop event which gets triggered when somebody drops a file inside the drop area. The drop event contains the information about the file which then we can use to display, and which we can consider that the process of accepting the file is completed. So let's just do that right now. I've already added the drop area. I'll just show you the HTML and CSS for it. So this is the drop area. I have uploader underscore underscore drop area. I am using the BAM CSS convention, by the way, which means uploader is the parent and within the uploader we have a drop area child. This is the main drop area that you have to consider. I also have a child component which is also named similarly, but this is just for having the drop area look a little bit better. Basically it's just to just so that I can show this white dotted border around it, and it's just that. As you can also see that if I can control the styles by changing the outer drop area, which is the uploader drop area, and if I change the height it gets changed here, right? So that's that. And these are the styles that create this blue dotted border and all. This doesn't work really, and as you can see, like, it just showed you the file, which is the default behavior that the browser has, and we'll have to implement our logic here. So first what we'll do is we'll grab the drop area, which is uploader underscore drop area, and we'll have all the events implemented on this. So the first part is we have a event listener for the drop event. We prevent default behavior, which is opening a file on the browser. If we don't do that, then it would open up in the browser, which we don't want. And then we grab the files using the dot data transfer property that we get. This has the information for the file, and we just log it, which marks this as okay, we've got what you uploaded, and not really uploaded but what you selected. So that just shows you the files. So we're good here, and let's just test this out. So we'll go to the downloads folder and sticker, and we'll drag the file here and we'll drop it, but it still has this default behavior that we get in the browser. And if we check the console, we didn't get any logs here. So what might be happening? I'll tell you what is happening. So this is a very annoying quirk of browsers and the drag and drop API particularly, which is if you don't prevent default behavior on drag events, even though you are dropping and you only care about the drop event, it would still show you that default behavior, which is opening the file inside the browser. And so the idea is basically to prevent the default behavior by adding all that listeners. So we do just that, and we add event listeners for all the three events, and now this should work. So if I now drop file, it would show me a log, and that was sticker.png. So that's that. So this works now. Now the only thing is the drop area is open by default, and it's fine for this basic app, but in real life we won't like the drop area to take this much space, and we might want to show another content in place of this. So we only want the drop area to show when we are dragging the file inside the browser, and hide when we aren't doing anything. So how can we achieve this? So this is the problem. We want to hide the drop area when we are outside. We are dragging outside the browser window, and or maybe we aren't dragging anyways. And if we are dragging inside the browser, we want to show the drop area. So how can we do this? So yeah, just add a drag enter and drag leave on the document. So what this achieves is drag enter is fired when we are dragging a file item inside the browser window, and drag leave is fired when we exit. So just do this. So first of all, we'll have to make a class for hiding and actually showing that the drop area is active. So by default it would be hidden. So let's add display as none, and when we add an active class it would be shown. So on enter we'll add that active class, so it shows that active area, and on leave we'll remove the active class. So this should make it work. So we drag and drop a file here, and it's not really working. I can see the drop area, but as soon as I enter it, it's disappearing, right? So I go inside the browser window. And it shows me the drop area, but as soon as I enter it, it just disappears. What can you tell is happening? I'll tell you what is happening. There is yet another very annoying quirk. This would truly make you hate the drag and drop API, which is this. Entering the child element also triggers drag leave. So we were under the assumption that drag leave is fired only when we go out from the browser window, which is fired on the document, but it's also fired if I enter the drop area, which is the child of the document. And it's annoying because the drop area is still within the document. So we'll have to deal with this, and the way to deal with this is related target. So there is this property called related target on some events like drag and mouse events, which tells more information about a particular event. So for drag enter, the target tells you where the device is entering to. So the cursor, if we are dragging a file, if we are entering inside a child, it's pointing to that, and the related target points to where we are entering from. So it's the document. If we are entering from the document, it's that. And if we are entering from outside, it's going to be null. So I'll show you that visually. So let's say if we are inside the browser window and we are entering inside a child, let's say a drop area. then the target would point to the child and the related target would point to the document object. And let's say if we are entering from outside the browser window, then in that case related target would be null because we have no idea and we can't get what was there outside the browser window. So that's always null, and which makes sense. Similarly, if we are leaving to somewhere outside the browser window, related target is null for drag leave event. So we can use this and make our solution perfect. So let's just get source element, which is e dot related target, and only when we don't know what the source is, we add an active class. And similarly for the drag leave event, only when we don't know where we are going, we remove the active class. So this should make it work. And let's drag and drop a file. Wow. And if you can see this, it's really working. Let's open up the console and see by dragging and dropping a file. And I'll drop this, and we got the file here, which is really nice. And we're done. We've got all the tests passing and we are good to go. Not quite. We have to do cross-browser testing, and while doing it, I found that dot related target is not working quite as expected. The solution that we implemented is not working quite expected. So I went to MDN and I found that okay, it's supported by all the browsers, but it's not working for Safari. So I dug into it more and I found that there's a long-standing issue, a bug which is, I guess, 12 years old. It's not yet solved. The bug is that related target is null every time on Safari. So you saw that MDN tells that it is supported by Safari, but being supported doesn't mean it's implemented correctly. So that's one thing to keep in mind while you read this browser compatibility statistics. So does this mean we don't have any cross-browser solutions? No. In the same thread of the bug, you will find a solution by Alex, who is also the creator of an amazing drag and drop library called React Beautiful DND. He has posted a workaround for Safari. It can detect and provide related target which is correct, and I like you to check that out. There's also one other solution which is using drag over. This is more of a hack than a workaround as previously, which is you get drag over events every time you move your cursor and when you are dragging files, and that can be helpful to know whether you are inside the browser window or outside, because it doesn't fire when you are outside the window. So I like you to try this as an exercise, and that would also make it work across browsers. And we're officially done. I hope you enjoyed fighting with all the quirks, and this makes me wonder that we'll have to deal with quirks when we develop systems, and there isn't a perfect platform out there. Also, all the time it won't be possible to fix the root cause of the problem. You'll have to create workarounds and get through your problems. So workarounds are not as bad as they sound. They just allow you to solve a problem that isn't possible by solving the root cause. And as developers, we would have to solve problems anyhow. So thanks for being with me till the end, and you can follow me as Savvy Shah across the internet.